What if Dexter didn't kill Brian Moser? In Dexter Season 1, Dexter Morgan makes the ultimate choice, eliminating his biological brother, Brian Moser, also known as the Ice Truck Killer. But what if he didn't? What if, instead of severing their bond in blood, Dexter chose partnership? What if, against all logic, he saw Brian not as a monster needing to be put down, but as the only person who truly understood him? This alternate timeline would lead Dexter down a path darker and more twisted than ever before. Dexter Morgan stands over his brother, Brian, tied up in his kill room. The cold, clinical air of the space feels even colder in the face of the decision that now hangs over him. For years, Dexter has lived by the code, his father's law that keeps him from becoming the monster he could so easily become. The code demands that Brian must die. But as his hand hovers over the knife, Dexter feels something stir deep within him. Something darker, more primal, yet more human. Brian is not just a monster, he's family, a brother. The thought hits Dexter with a jolt, shaking his certainty. He isn't alone, not anymore. The code, the law of Harry's teachings, ingrained deep into Dexter's soul, screams for him to finish it. But the voice of something buried beneath that structure, something starved for connection, whispered a question he's never allowed him to ask. What if he doesn't have to be alone? Dexter lowers the knife. Brian watches him, confusion spreading across his face. But then, a strange understanding settles in. There's no joy in Dexter's eyes, no sudden softness or affection, just the recognition that this moment, this decision, is different from anything Dexter has ever faced. Instead of the clean, calculated cut, Dexter unties Brian, his movements mechanical, his expression unreadable. No embrace, no apology, no tears. Brian, who had so many times assumed Dexter would be just like him, kills without hesitation, seems to understand the decision without needing more. "You couldn't just tell me you're my brother?" Dexter asks. Brian smirks as he rubs his wrists where the ropes had been, loosening the tension of the captivity. Brian's failure wasn't in underestimating Dexter, it was in misunderstanding him. Dexter wasn't just a killing machine. He was someone who, no matter how hard he tried to suppress it, still needed human connection, still needed something more than his dark urges. Brian finally pieces it all together. Dexter has attachments unlike him. Dexter doesn't argue. There's no need. It's true. He's been pretending for so long that he's a man free of ties, free of weakness. But the truth is undeniable. Dexter does have attachments. To Deborah. To Rita. To a life he never thought he could have. And he's not willing to lose them. Not now. Brian has no place in Miami anymore. His past as the Ice Truck Killer has already sealed his fate, and staying in the city would only lead to disaster. Dexter knows the danger Brian faces, and although part of him wants to keep him close, he knows the right thing is to let him go. Without a word, Brian disappears into the night, leaving Dexter behind, caught in the silence of his choice. As he stands there, the heaviness of his decision lingers, and he's left questioning whether he truly did what was best, or if it was just another mistake in a long line of them. Weeks later, the days blur together for Dexter. There are no new bodies to find, no fresh mysteries to solve, but there's also no peace. The quiet of his home is only broken by the distant sounds of the city, of the life that's continuing without him. The world continues to spin while Dexter remains tethered to the shadows. Deborah stays close, lingering around him like a shadow, refusing to be left alone. She's haunted by what happened with Brian, but Dexter has learned to live with his own ghosts. He isn't afraid of being alone, or at least he tells himself that he isn't. Then, one night, a message lights up his phone. Harbor. Boat. Now. Dexter at the harbor sees a bigger version of his boat next to his. Brian steps onto the deck of the boat, grinning in a way that makes Dexter's stomach tighten. Dexter stares at him, not bothering to hide the disbelief on his face. He had assumed Brian would have disappeared by now. He had hoped Brian would be far away, somewhere out of his reach. But there he is, standing in front of him like nothing has changed. Brian chuckles, shaking his head. "You hide in plain sight. Why can't I?" If you're liking this story so far, please make sure to subscribe for more. What do you think? Should Dexter have kept Brian around longer? Let us know in the comments. Dexter observes Brian as he reveals a full disguise, a bizarre yet unsettling move. Dexter, wary and calculating, tries to think of a way to get out of the situation, but Brian shifts his attention to a man nearby, suggesting the man fits into Dexter's code. Despite Dexter's hesitation, a deeper part of him begins to stir, tempting him to reconsider. He sets a few ground rules. Deborah and Miami Metro are off limits, but even as Brian agrees, Dexter feels something shift within him. The prospect of having a partner in darkness becomes too tempting to ignore. and a new chapter begins. The first kill comes quickly and with precision. Dexter and Brian move seamlessly together, each one playing their part with deadly accuracy. Dexter is the careful planner, the one who takes his time to set everything in motion, while Brian brings a raw, chaotic energy to the mix. Despite their differences, they make a surprisingly efficient team. Each kill is deliberate and controlled. As the bodies accumulate, Dexter begins to feel something change within him. The solitude he's lived with for so long starts to lessen. It's not just the kills that bring this shift, it's the connection with Brian. For the first time, Dexter isn't alone in his darkness. Brian sees him not as an outsider, but as someone who shares the same dark impulses. There's an unspoken understanding between them, a bond that doesn't need words. There's a difference between hunting alone and hunting with someone who moves like an extension of yourself. Brian sees Dexter in a way that no one else ever could, not as a monster, not as an outsider, but as family. And yet, as close as they are, there's still tension. The latest victim is strapped to the table, drenched in sweat, resigned to his fate. But before Dexter can finish the job, Brian steps forward, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. My turn. Dexter raises an eyebrow. Excuse me? Brian gestures towards the man. You got the last two. I think it's my go. Dexter exhales, tilting his head slightly. Actually, you got the last one. The guy who killed his wife. Remember? Brian scoffs. And you got the two before that, which, by the way, isn't exactly fair, little brother. Dexter crosses his arms. Not my fault you decided to take a vacation in between. The man on the table glances between them, eyes wide. He has no idea what's happening. Only that it doesn't seem to matter that he's about to die. What matters is who gets to do it. Brian suddenly grins and yanks the gag out of the guy's mouth. Let's settle this democratically. Hey buddy, whose hands would you rather die by? Me? Or by Mr. By the Book over here? The man gasps for air, voice shaky. I mean, you could just let me go? Brian tilts his head, considering it. Then he looks at Dexter. Yeah, he's not helping. Old-fashioned way it is. Dexter sighs, already knowing where this is going. Dexter doesn't respond immediately. He just watches his brother, his lips curling ever so slightly. The tied-up man lets out a muffled groan as his captors prepare to play what has to be the most psychotic game of chance ever. Best 2 out of 3? Brian asks. 1 and done, Dexter replies. 1, 2, 3. Dexter throws scissors. Brian throws paper. Dexter, ever the scientist, can't resist. You know, statistically speaking, most people default to rock first, but I've been studying your habits. You tend to second guess yourself, which led me to believe. Brian waves him off, rubbing his temple. Dexter shrugs. He turns back to the man, now trembling. Knife through the heart. Silence follows. For a moment, the only sound is the wet pooling of blood against plastic. Dexter steps back, admiring his work. Then he looks to Brian, who was already sulking. No one else in the world could have this kind of camaraderie over a kill. This is what brotherhood was meant to be. But as he watches Brian, something gnaws at him. How much of this is real? How much of it is temporary? Days later, Dexter found himself at a crime scene. A body lay on the sand, strangled, the tide having carried it ashore. His pulse quickened as he scanned the details. Then his eyes landed on a wallet, a photo, a yacht. Recognition struck. He knew that yacht. Brian's. Dexter had seen this story before. The doomed partnership. The inevitable betrayal. It was a tale as old as the dark itself. Michael Corleone and Fredo. Scar and Mufasa. The Joker and every poor fool who had ever trusted him. Alliances like this never lasted. Not in movies, not in life. And yet, for a brief moment, Dexter had let himself believe. He'd let the fantasy take hold, that he and Brian could coexist. The two monsters could lurk in the shadows together without one eventually turning on the other. It was foolish, naive. He woke up to reality. Brian wasn't just a brother. He was a wanted man, a loose thread that couldn't be ignored. The weight of that truth settled over Dexter like a cold hand on his shoulder. This was how it had to be. If the code meant anything, if he truly lived by it, then there was only one path forward. There could only be one monster in the dark. The tension finally erupts when Dexter confronts Brian. He storms onto the yacht, weary from the lies and the bloodshed. He demands to know the truth about the murder of the yacht's owner. Brian is unfazed, shrugging it off as an accident. But Dexter can feel the crack in their uneasy alliance widening. As the situation intensifies, Deborah and Dokes arrive, linking the yacht to the latest victim. The drama spirals further as Brian smirks, enjoying the chaos he helped create. The chase begins when Brian bolts from the yacht, knocking Deborah aside in the process. Dokes gives chase, but the pursuit takes a dangerous turn when Dokes is struck by a car. Dexter seizes the opportunity, slipping away. He knows he's deeper in this than ever. Deborah, meanwhile, uncovers something at the yacht she wasn't expecting. A phone with Dexter's number in the call log. She's left with more questions than answers as the silence of the situation weighs heavily on her. At the hospital, Dokes is seething with anger over the attack, but Deborah is lost in her thoughts, staring at the phone. When it rings, she answers, only to hear nothing but silence on the other end. Deborah storms into Dexter's apartment, her mind racing with questions and accusations. When she steps inside, she's not prepared for what she finds. Brian, standing in the middle of the room, waiting for her. The air is thick with tension, each moment stretching longer as the truth looms just out of reach. Brian's presence, so unexpected, only deepens the mystery. Deborah's hands tremble as she grips her gun, her knuckles white, her breath shallow. Fear coils tight in her stomach, but it isn't just fear, it's betrayal, confusion, disbelief. The man she thought she loved, the man she almost married, the man who tried to kill her, had been in contact with the person she trusts most in the world, Dexter. Her mind struggles to process it all. An array of emotions flood through her like a tidal wave, each one crashing against the next. Anger, hurt, panic, resolve. Every fiber of her being tells her to run, to escape, to distance herself from him, but she won't. Not this time. Brian Moser takes a slow step forward, hands slightly raised, an expression that's almost gentle. Almost. His voice is steady. Deb, we can talk. She doesn't hesitate. The gun lifts, her aim dead center on his forehead. Brian stops. There's no fear in his eyes, just amusement, like this is some inside joke she isn't in on. Then, with an air of complete indifference, he turns towards the coffee table where a pizza box sits, flipping it open as if she isn't standing there, ready to put a bullet in his skull. Pineapple and anchovy. The smell turns her stomach. He picks up a slice, takes a bite, chewing slowly, savoring it. Pineapple ain't as bad as you think. Deborah doesn't lower the gun. Pizza won't improve this situation. Brian shrugs, unconcerned, still chewing. There's something infuriatingly casual about him, as if he isn't the center of a goddamn nightmare. And then, just as expected, the front door swings open. Dexter. He freezes in the doorway, his eyes darting from Brian to Deborah to the gun in her hand. The look on his face is unreadable, but for the first time in a long time, Deborah sees something she never thought she'd associate with him. Guilt. Brian smirks. Well, well, look who finally showed up. Deborah doesn't flinch, doesn't acknowledge the quip. Her gun stays steady, locked onto Brian's head. Her heart is pounding, so hard she can feel it in her throat. Dexter's voice is calm, measured. Deb. She snaps, her voice sharper than the steel in her grip. What the fuck, Dex? Dexter's jaw tightens. He takes a slow step forward, hands slightly raised, mirroring Brian's earlier gesture. This isn't just about Brian anymore. This is about Dexter. About secrets. About the horrifying realization that maybe she's never really known the person she trusts most. Deborah's stare cuts through Brian like a blade, her rage pressing into the space between them. A thick, suffocating stillness filled the room. Dexter didn't move. He knew this was inevitable. Knew that whatever came next, there was no avoiding it. She demands to know why he'd been in contact with the man who tried to kill her. Brian stands there, watching, waiting for Dexter to explain. Dexter's heart pounds in his chest as he realizes this moment could break everything he's worked for. With a deep breath, Dexter faces the truth, knowing it's impossible to take back what he's about to say. He tells her, plainly and without hesitation, Brian is his brother. The words hang in the air, a devastating revelation that shatters Deborah's entire world. So, what do you think? Should Deborah pull the trigger, arrest Brian, or let him walk free? The tension is at an all-time high, and we want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, like the video, and don't forget to subscribe for part 2.
I have a brother. A real brother. None of this foster bullshit.
Dexter stood over Brian, ready to end him, but at the last moment, he chose to let him go. Weeks later, Brian returned with a proposal. Why hunt alone when they could hunt together? Against his better judgment, Dexter agreed. At first, they thrived, two predators in sync. But while Dexter followed the code, Brian craved chaos. Their partnership spiraled as a body linked to Brian's yacht surfaced, drawing heat from Deborah and Dokes. Dexter knew it couldn't last. Brian was reckless, a loose end. And now, with Deborah finding him in his apartment, the walls are closing in fast. Loyalties will be tested. Will Brian make it out alive this time? Let's find out. Debra Morgan had been through a lot in her life: drug dealers, shootouts, the constant uphill battle of proving she was more than just Harry's little girl. But nothing, not one damn thing, had prepared her for this moment. Dexter had just said it. The words sat between them, thick in the air like Miami humidity. Brian Moser is my brother. Deb blinked. Once, twice. That was usually her brain's way of buffering when life threw a curveball. It didn't help. She still heard the words. The fuck did you just say? Dexter, ever the picture of calm, exhaled through his nose, his hands resting on his lap like he was about to confess something minor. He is my brother. Deborah's head snapped toward the sound. Brian Moser, smirking, like this was all some sick joke. Deb's stomach twisted. Her breath hitched. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Jesus fucking Christ, she breathed, taking a step back, instinct kicking in. Brian chuckled, tilting his head. Yeah, about that. Turns out baby brother here has a soft spot for family. Isn't that right, Dex? Dexter's expression didn't change, but something changed. Behind his eyes, Deb's laugh came out sharp and bitter. Oh, okay, cool. And what, you just forgot to mention that little fun fact? Jesus, Dexter, this is... She pressed her palms against her temples, shaking her head like she could physically eject the insanity of what she was hearing. I need a drink. Number I need, like 6 drinks. Brian grinned. I always liked your sense of humor. Dexter had seen Deborah lose her shit before. This was different. This wasn't anger. This was disbelief in its purest form. Like her entire world just tilted off its axis, and she was scrambling to grab onto anything that made sense. He leaned forward slightly. Deb, I didn't know until I was already in it. Brian found me first. Oh, well, that makes it so much fucking better. She let out another short, humorless laugh, pacing now, her boots clicking against the floor in sharp little staccato beats. Jesus Christ, Dexter, he kidnapped me. He strapped me to a fucking table and he was gonna kill me. You knew that, right? That was your brother. Brian sighed, rolling his eyes. Technically, I was gonna let Dexter do the honors. But hey, bygones, right? Deborah spun toward him, her grip tightening on her gun. Shut the fuck up. Dexter knew. He knew it in the same way he knew his heartbeat should be racing right now but wasn't. Knew it in the way he knew he should feel guilty, but didn't. And yet, watching Deborah unravel, something inside him twisted. A strange, unfamiliar sensation. Regret? No, not regret. He made his choices, but he hadn't wanted this. Deborah took a step back, almost like she was seeing him for the first time. Jesus, Dexter, I mean, how? Why are you protecting him? He thought about lying, but that wasn't what this was anymore. Deborah deserved something. He wasn't sure what, but he owed her something. He was the only one who understood me. Wrong answer. Deb let out a strangled laugh, but there was no humor in it now, just a deep, aching pain that settled into her bones. Understood you? She pointed at herself. I understood you, Dex. I was always fucking there. But I guess I just wasn't psychotic enough for the Big Brother Club, huh? Dexter didn't like this weight pressing down on him. Guilt. He wasn't built for guilt. Brian let out a mock sigh. Wow, this is getting tense. You guys need a minute, or... Deborah wiped at her eyes, furious at herself for even letting tears form. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with this, Dexter. Like, what the actual fuck do I do with this? Dexter didn't have an answer. For once, he had no plan, no strategy. Just a sister standing in front of him, looking at him like he was a stranger. And Brian? Brian was just standing there, enjoying the show. Then in a blur, Deb's gun was up, her hands steady, her breathing even, the weight of years of training taking over. I should kill you, she said, voice steady, aimed right at Brian's head. Brian looking more amused than concerned. Now, Deb, that's not very sisterly of you. Neither is leaving me to die in a fucking kill room, she shot back. Dexter took a step forward, voice calm but firm. Deb put the gun down. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the deep, soul-crushing realization that the person she loved most had been lying to her all along. Then she turned back to Brian. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Brian grinned. "Do it." Dexter moved before she could. His hand closed around her wrist. "Fuck!" Deborah wrenched her arm free, stumbling back, her chest heaving. Her gun clattered to the floor. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of her ragged breathing. Brian let out a low whistle. "Now that's family drama." Dexter closed his eyes for half a second, feeling the weight of it all settle onto him. He had no idea how to fix this. Deborah left the room. She ran out of the apartment, gasping for air, struggling to breathe. Dexter followed, reaching out, but she jerked away from his touch. "I need space, Dex." She didn't look back as she walked away. "What are you gonna do?" Dexter asked softly, his voice barely cutting through the night air. Deborah turned, her eyes wild with emotion. "I don't know, Dex. I don't know. You've been harboring a fugitive." Her hands shot up in exasperation before she stormed off, leaving Dexter standing there, watching her disappear into the city. The next day at work, tension hung thick in the air. Dexter knew Deb was keeping it all bottled up. If she weren't, he would have already felt the full force of her fury. He found her at her desk, her jaw clenched, fingers tapping restlessly against the wood. He leaned against the desk, trying to gauge her temperature. "How are you?" Deborah finally looked at him, eyes dark with anger. "You're hiding the man who murdered several women and tried to murder me. How do you think I'm feeling?" "Is that really a fair assessment of the events?" Dexter asked. She let out a bitter laugh. "No, I'll tell you what's not fair. Not only are you picking your brother, you're choosing the man who made me fall in love with a fantasy, made me believe in some happily ever after, only to rip it away and then try to fucking kill me. No, worse. He tried to get you to kill me because he thought you were just as twisted as him. And you know what? If you're still choosing him, maybe you are." She stormed off, leaving Dexter with her words hanging in the air, cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. He knew she was right. In his heart, he knew Brian couldn't stay. He was a threat to everything Dexter had built. And if he was discovered, Dexter's carefully curated normalcy would shatter. If Brian is caught, Dexter was facing 5 to 10 years behind bars, if not worse. He had to make Brian disappear, either entice him to leave or ensure he was gone for good. Back at the apartment, Dexter tossed one plane ticket onto the table. "Nebraska?" Brian laughed, picking up the ticker. "What the fuck is in Nebraska?" "A new start," Dexter said simply. Brian gave him a deadpan look. "Come on, you've clearly watched too many cliché movies. I don't need to be that far away." Dexter smirked. With Deb knowing, it's too dangerous. Sooner or later, someone else will find out. "And then what?" Dexter exhaled. "Then you'll get the chair, and I'll be in a cell right next to you." Brian studied him, the smirk fading. He knew Dexter was right. He had been playing too close to the fire. Good things had to end eventually. He exhaled sharply. "So that's it, huh? You're picking her over your true blood?" Dexter's jaw tightened. "She is blood too. Maybe not biologically, but she is. And it's not that I'm picking her, I'm picking me. I'm picking Rita. I want a shot at normal." Brian nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. I get it. It sucked, but he had to go. The next day, Dexter stood at a fresh crime scene, Deborah by his side. The tension lingered despite Brian being out of the picture. Then his phone rang. "Brian, we have a problem," Dexter sighed. "I thought you'd be halfway to Nebraska by now." "I was gonna be, but I need to get back to my boat. Looks like it's about to be seized." Brian explained he had cash, stashed away safely, but also he had a picture of Dexter. He couldn't just abandon the crime scene, but this wasn't something he could ignore. He told Deborah. She was pissed, of course. The money would be useful for Brian's fresh start, but that picture, that had to disappear. Deborah took matters into her own hands. "Tell Brian, set a meeting point. I'll handle this." Brian gave a location, near the Everglades. Deborah arrived at the dock, taking an earring off as she approached the officer guarding the boat. Flashed her badge. "Lost an earring. Sentimental. Just need one last look." Side note, if you're confused about the boat, check out part 1 for the full context. If you're enjoying the content so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps the channel grow, and I've got plenty more exciting scenarios coming your way. Despite Deborah agreeing to help, Dexter couldn't shake his unease. Leaving her alone with Brian felt like a ticking time bomb. Something was off. His instincts screamed at him, warning that this could spiral fast. He needed to leave the crime scene immediately. Thinking fast, he pulled Masuka aside, claiming Rita had an emergency. Masuka, ever eager to help, waved him off without question. Without wasting another second, Dexter rushed straight to Brian, hoping his gut wasn't right, hoping this wasn't a premonition of the disaster about to unfold. But deep down, he knew better. Something bad was coming. Deborah climbed aboard, found the hidden compartment, cash secured. The photo of Dexter, that made her stomach turn. She shoved it in her pocket. Time to move. Back in her car, speeding toward the meeting point. Duffel bag in the passenger seat, Brian waiting as she pulled up. She got out, tossed the bag at him. "Now get the hell out of our lives." Brian didn't move. Not right away. He let the moment hang. "Relax. You think I'd plan to strap you to a table again? I would if I could, but Dexter would be more than upset. I'd love to say this has been fun, but it really hasn't," Deborah frowned. "Why? Why couldn't you just tell Dexter you were his brother? Why screw with my life? Why is it always about Dexter?" Brian folded her arms. "Sibling jealousy? See, I don't have that problem." "Oh, I see how it is. But let me give you some clarity. Your father took my brother away from me. Looked at me like I was garbage. That piece of shit left me in a van, drenched in my mother's blood. The only thing keeping me sane was thinking about my brother. And that man? He's dead now. So yeah, I thought I'd make his biological daughter's life hell." Deborah cut him off. "You thought Dexter was a monster like you. You know he's not on your level." Brian grinned. "Oh, he is my level. You don't know, do you? You think Dexter doesn't think about killing people? You think he chose blood spatter analysis because he wants to be around dead people? Number, he has to. You don't know your brother. He's a killer." Silence. Brian saw the shift in her expression. He backpedaled. "Is what I would have liked to say. But he's not like me. Lucky for him, your good old dad coached him to live a normal life. Forgive me for being bitter." Deborah didn't flinch. "Doesn't matter. He chose me over you, and I'll make sure he never becomes like you." Brian chuckled. "That's your problem. You want everything to be about you. Main character syndrome. This isn't about you. I'm doing this for Dexter. Deep down, he wants me to stay. But we gotta give the baby her bottle, don't we?" Her fingers tensed around the gun at her hip. "Shut the fuck up! You'll never understand the true brotherhood we share." Brian laughed at her, pulling the gun again. "You're nothing but daddy's little girl, weak, scared, and desperate for approval." Dexter's car skidded to a halt, gravel spitting out like teeth from a bar fight. He barely threw it in park before he was moving, heart rattling in his chest, eyes locked on the sight ahead. Deborah, gun raised, finger tight on the trigger, about to finish what she started in the apartment. Brian stood on the receiving end, expression unreadable, almost accepting. Dexter's mind sprinted faster than his legs. Was she doing him a favor? Would this clean things up? Maybe, but it wasn't her mess to clean. "Deb, stop. You don't have to do this." She flinched, breathing sharp, but still the gun stayed up. "He's leaving," Dexter pressed. "You won't have to see him again." Deborah hesitated, but in the end, she lowered the gun. A slow, reluctant surrender. Brian exhaled, shaking his head like a disappointed parent. Then without a word, he walked to his car. Dexter tracked him, gut still tight. Something was off. The passenger seat, the gun, the flash. A single shot snapped through Deborah's skull. Not a gasp, not a scream. Just a silence that hit harder than the bullet. Dexter turned, too late, a second shot ripping through his lower leg. He collapsed, pain slamming through him in waves, hand pressing to the wound like it could rewind time. Brian approached, towering over him. A grin, but not one of victory. "You really picked that piece of trash over me? She's for the Gators now. I'll leave that part to you." He sighed like this was all a chore. "You want revenge, brother? Find me in Nebraska." He leaned in, voice turning smug. Except I won't be in Nebraska, because who the hell wants to go to Nebraska? Brian winked, climbed into the car, and was gone. Dexter lay there, blood pooling, body shaking. Not from pain, not from fear, from knowing he let this happen. If you enjoyed parts 1 and 2 of this scenarios, leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Your feedback is important and helps the channel grow. If you're craving more Dexter What If scenarios, make sure to like, comment, and share. Your support makes all the difference. Thanks for being a part of this journey, and stay tuned for more exciting content coming your way.